killed in Leland on July 31st. After reviewing evidence in the case, District Attorney John David said DeAndre Davis was legally justified in using deadly force against Walker. According to the DA, it stemmed from an altercation that escalated between the two. Davis apparently had been held at gunpoint and was severely beaten until he got a gun and shot Walker. Davis then jumped from a window and called for help. After 7 years, a verdict has been reached in the trial of a Wilmington man accused of shooting and killing another man. Antonio Beatty has been found not guilty of first-degree murder in the death of 25-year-old Carlton Walker Whitley. Whitley was shot and killed in July of 2015 in a parking lot near the corner of Darlington and Medding Roads. After 7 years of delays, Beatty's case went to trial last week. According to New Hanover County's District Attorney Ben David and Beatty's attorney, the evidence presented by the state did not prove its case against Beatty beyond a reasonable doubt. The UNCW Seahawks are taking flight in a new way. The Federal Aviation Administration has selected the university for a special training initiative. UNCW has been teaching drone classes since 2017 and is now a part of the FAA Unmanned Aircraft Systems Collegiate Training Initiative. It's part of the Certificate Program for Geospatial Intelligence. That certificate is offered to students and members of the community. UNCW professor Dr. Narcissa Percope will lead the initiative. And a recent spike in vandalism and damage at a Wilmington park is prompting police and other officials to hold a community meeting. Wade Park is located on Bethel Road. It covers nearly 17 acres and includes a playground, picnic shelter, bike racks, parking, and restrooms. If you'd like to share your input and concerns, a meeting will be held at the park next Tuesday afternoon between 4 and 6 p.m. For more on these stories, you can head over to wwaytv3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Drier conditions in store for us on this Wednesday. Although we are going to be under mostly cloudy skies, temperatures are going to be below the average, getting into the middle 80s, lower 80s for the immediate coastline, and the humidity still sticking around with the stalled front just off to our south. Not going to rule out an isolated shower over the course of the day today. As for tonight, our temperatures dropping back down into the upper 60s and the lower 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Join Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, located at 8210 River Road, Southport, is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with the Tackle Box open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6. Marine Service Pro is a full Suzuki and Tohatsu dealership. They deal in pre-owned boats, full service and repair, with certified technicians in all engines, and fiberglass specialists. The Tackle Box offers fresh, local seafood, live bait, a tackle shop, and fish packing and shipping. They also offer a full-service U-Haul dealership. Spend time with Leon or Jenny for one-stop shopping at Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, 8210 River Road, Southport.
Hey, welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, right here on the Big Talker Network. That would be the website, bigtalker.live, all kind of magic up there, you know what I'm saying? Download the app for the Android and iOS devices, that's a good start. And if you don't believe we're a cool radio station, you can peruse our schedule of content, find the programs that make sense to you, they all will. Except maybe this one, of course. If you're really hip, you can pair your Bluetooth device with your automobile's entertainment center and take the Big Talker anywhere and everywhere you need to be, want to be, or end up being. It's not like we have a choice in a lot of ways. There's also an email link, so you can send us any comments, questions, concerns, compliments, or critiques you may have. We cannot improve without your help. We also have a call-in line, which is 910-444-0281. In case you want to get in on the conversation, you can also chat with us. Yes, on the Facebook and live streams, right? There's a lot of places, a lot of ways to interact, with the people here at the Big Talker. It is a Riverwatch weekend, Riverwatch Wednesday. God, I wish it was a weekend. We will have Dr. Larry Cahoon of Cape Fear Riverwatch joining us at 9-ish. Before that, we will have our friend Dan Roman from Full Circle Fitness. He's got quite the guest this week on his program, Living Fit After 50, which premieres Friday at 1. And this one sounds pretty exciting, so you're going to want to call into this one. I'll let him explain it a little bit more. And with Dr. Cahoon, one of the things that the way I found Dr. Cahoon personally was his understanding of the effects of the environment on striped bass, all right? Well, it turns out that the striped bass are kind of like an indicator. I don't know if anybody remembers The Simpsons when they had the three-eyed frog living in the moat around the nuclear plant. And that was supposed to be indicative of the changes to the environment and what it does to the environment, to the creatures in that environment, right? So the effects of the striped bass population is indicative of problems with the river. And I ran across a story of an organism that is one of the 3 largest single DNA organisms on the planet. And it's right here in America, and it's damned scary. So we'll get to that about 9 o'clock, but until then, I would like to converse a little bit on purposeful ignorance. Boy, it got quiet. Purposeful ignorance. This is where people decide to choose to be ignorant or look the other way when it comes to things, like technology or science or math or things like this. And personally, I find it to be an insult. I don't like math. What am I going to use? I never use math. That's your problem. The whole idea behind what I would consider education is to be curious and to answer questions for yourself at a level that's profound. While it is that I may never be in a spaceship, I fully understand how an orbit works and what the gravitational effects are. And of course, with the right numbers, I can plug them into the appropriate formulas and tell you where your spacecraft is going to be. This is information this is knowledge that has already been accumulated and proven, right? So when we claim some sort of ignorance or fear or some sort of stupid excuse, that's really what it is. It's an excuse to sort of explain or embrace or somehow cutesify your own ignorance. And I find that to be absolutely abhorrent. And there's a number of ways that this plays out. And I'm not even going to go into the politics because y'all just stupid over there. That's just, there's nothing about what's going on that gives me any comfort. But I believe it starts with the inability for people to explore beyond their own stupidity, for lack of a better term. It's impossible for me to work with a number of people when they come at me with some sort of stupid. And I'm at the age and I'm at the level in my skill set that I can easily turn away. I can choose what gigs I want and what gigs I don't want. And if I find that I'm working with somebody who is so profoundly ignorant and proud of it, I want nothing to do with them. If you're curious, if you are developing an understanding of the world around you, whether it's physical or chemical or whatever, right? Biology, there's a lot of disciplines that I get it. During the day, right, there are people with master's degrees that are working in restaurants because their gig that they're studying just isn't available right now. Or maybe like me, they're difficult to get along with. Whatever the case. The fact that they are still studying, they are still reading, they are still interested, and they are still pursuing, that's That's the spirit I want to get into. Right? These are people that are still going to ask questions and be curious well into their ages. It transcends school, right? I mean, just like the guy the other day who's apparently under fire for conducting a Catholic mass in the ocean using a floating mattress for an altar while in his swim trunks, and everybody's trying to beat the heat. It was for kids, kids on the beach. And they just completely tore into this guy for improvising and still doing his job. And I thought, man, that's pretty brutal. Right? The whole planet, in theory, is supposed to be your church. You can worship anytime 2 or more are gathered in his name. But apparently not, according to the Catholic Church. You have to wear the gold vestments. You have to wear the appropriately colored purple shirt. Oh, and you didn't have socks. You were supposed to have socks and penny loafers in order to preach or perform mass. You look at that word, perform, right? Perform. It's an act. It's a ritual. It's a performance. It's a performance the man had to master. It's not that he really needs to understand the words that he's saying. He just needs to know to say those words in that order while doing the little hand gestures and magical incantations or whatever else. Again, once we abandon religion for reason, we will understand peace at a profound level. Because when people come together and work on a common project, I don't care if you're in 3rd grade, high school, college, or working on NASA, when you get people coming together focused on a common project and they achieve the peace, the camaraderie, the entire life of that project is its own entity. That's those projects, right? Working at PBS with some cats and building a production truck, we were all different. Right? We had teetotalers and we had complete monsters, right? We had, psychopaths and people with bad hair. But every one of us was very good at what we do, and we came together and we built something that wasn't there before. And that's why I mean that we will know peace. Because that's how it works, is a common denominator, a common goal, a common path. And I'm going to stay away from the politics because y'all have just taken that into a whole stupid level. I'm going to use examples like labs, right? You go into a lab and you have to conduct an experiment in chemistry or physics, and you're trying to determine the outcome. You've laid out your postulate, your theorem, and what it is you're testing for or experimenting to, discover or prove. And a lot of that is to prove it to ourselves, right? One of them, I remember this exclusively, was to make our own rainbow. I didn't have to sink a boat, right? I didn't have to kill a bunch of animals or people. I didn't have to flood anything. All I had to do was make the measurements, place the lighting appropriately, place the electric eye, because the experiment was to take the human out of it and show that the rainbow can be created using the exact numbers, angles, right? Appropriate everything, and we recreated a rainbow right there in the lab. Well, it doesn't sound like much, does it? But with all the magic that people have put onto the rainbow, that it's no, it's not. It's light refracting at an angle of 42 degrees to the observer. If you don't understand this, this is the type of willful ignorance to which I refer. Physics is fascinating. Chemistry, it's fascinating, but it's also a hell of a lot more difficult to comprehend. However, all the concepts building one upon the other started when you were a child learning how to count how many crayons you had, or how many apples, or how many cookies, or whatever it was they were using as the element to teach you how to count. And again, way back when, before we even had a written language, the very first aspects of our written language were actually Marks and clay tablet for market, right? How much inventory, how much it's worth, who we sold it to. That's where our language and communication begins. It begins in the market. All conversation, all communication, all language stems from this simple truth. Now, the concept of addition and subtraction was developed over the years. We became more aware of how to count in larger and larger quantities. If I have 1,000 fish in 20 boxes, there's 50 fish in each box. Boom. Super easy to figure out. But it took men, or adults, I should say, for their time, because considering the lifespan was 40 years old, so you're an adult by the time you're 12, 14, something like that, and we're figuring out, hey, this is how we count. So the people who figured it out in their later years taught it to their children and the next generation at a younger age. This should have continued to the modern day. Had it done so, had this been appropriately taught to the next generation at younger and younger ages as they're able to pick up these concepts, which is childishly simple, we would be teaching physics, actual physics, in middle school. Now, I was lucky enough to have a teacher who would introduce physics concepts and then extract the one little bit of math out of that, because that's the part of his lesson that we're actually on. But he went a little bit further to incorporate our lesson into the real world. And that has stopped. Very seldom do we actually have awareness as to how the world works or how things work around us, right? So there are many people who shy away from things like physics and math, and they claim to have already know it all. Hey, I know better than that. And they've never cracked a physics book or, left high school with a 2.0 GPA. Now, don't get me wrong, right? I think one of the coolest groups of people I know are people that have jobs that work with their hands. They're welders, they're craftsmen, they're carpenters is the term, I guess. But there's two types of carpenters, right? The ones who slap a house together with a couple of nails and call it a day. Then you have the artisans that are creating furniture, that are creating, livable works of art. And now they have a day job that allows them the luxury, which was what we were discussing in our philosophy class, as to how it is that Socrates was able to pontificate for hours on end while getting absolutely hammered and still have something of a living, right? This stuff was supported back then. So being smart, being stupid is actually a choice. Unless there's actually something wrong with the development of the brain, everything else is willful ignorance. That's the term I meant, not purposeful, willful ignorance. Purposeful ignorance is the whole basis of the plausible deniability, right? As long as he's too stupid to know what's going on, then, he can't be held to account for when he does something stupid. That doesn't fly in my world. I'm not appreciative of that type of thing. But I am appreciative of the person that even if he's sitting there, as I was for a while during the pandemic, and there was absolutely no performance gigs at all. I'm washing dishes at a restaurant, sweeping the floor, emptying the trash, doing whatever the hell it takes to pay the bills. And on my break, they find me out back. And, hey, what are you doing? I'm doing a crossword puzzle. Why? Because my brain is bored. He couldn't understand that. Right? He just didn't get it. He was just waiting to get off the clock and go get high or drunk or whatever. Yeah, wahoo, man, I can't wait to get out of here. I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm getting paid to be here. I'm doing my job. I got 10 minutes, and 10 minutes here in the smoking section. Staring at the dirt doesn't make sense, but I can massage and tickle my brain by going through a couple of crossword puzzles. And that keeps my, the jelly in my skull from turning to goo. Right? Why is this such a problem? Why are so many people so willfully adamantly, willfully ignorant. These are people that simply will not approach any problem with any sort of logic, right? And that's the beauty of this whole thing, is that the knowledge doesn't end. It doesn't stop. Your brain doesn't stop growing, right? The evolution of man did not stop, I should say, with opposable thumbs and a convoluted language in excess of 470,000 words. No. All of this continues, and that's what I think was the best embodiment for everything else about my stepfather. He did encourage continuing to massage the brain, continuing to learn about stuff. On the opposite side of the coin, my mom refuses to understand how orbit works. She just flat refuses. Okay, it's an orbit. And that's it. That's its own little magical thing. God makes orbits. Right? But for anybody who understands the concept of throwing a rock and creating a parabola due to gravity and acceleration, right, 1/2 AT squared, all of these come into play. So when you go to a baseball game or watch a baseball game or even just a play on baseball where they're like, oh my God, do you believe this happens? And I'm like, yeah. The Magnus effect, with a spinning ball over a long distance, that's going to have something to do with it. I may not be totally hip to the formula, right, that I can plug in the numbers and get a result, but I understand the Magnus effect. I understand spin on a ball. I understand impact, right? There's a whole lot of physics that are just really, really simple individual concepts that work together to send the ball flying out of the park or into somebody's head or whatever the case may be. And that's one of the coolest things. Like my stepfather, one of his gigs was to understand what happened to the USS Iowa. Go look it up. The report on the USS Iowa incident, where apparently the front part of a ship was blown apart. And the Navy decided that they were going to blame a sailor by accusing him of being gay and accusing him of having a less than amicable relationship with another sailor on the same ship, and decided to blow himself up along with everybody else. My stepfather proved that to be incorrect. And as a result of my stepfather's investigation, the Navy was required to apologize to the family of the sailor they accused of such heinous crap, and also force the Navy to pay out, right? Because this is, death, dismemberment, and accidental death, and all that good stuff that when it happens in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force or the Marines, any of the military, all kind of stuff goes sideways. During his investigation, he also discovered many things one of which was the piss-poor condition of our nuclear arms, right? He went to all these different Air Force and different military bases. Some were Air Force, some were Marine or Army or whatever. I wasn't allowed to go, but he would come back, usually with a newspaper. That was pretty much his entire, what's the word I'm looking for? When you go somewhere and you come back with a memento or that's usually it. He didn't buy little trinkets and say, hey, look, I was in Oregon and I got this snow globe. No, that wasn't him, man. So he went back to the Senate Arms Committee and he said, okay, that's how the Iowa incident happened. Poor guy. Take care of him. But while I was doing this, I discovered that we have a really pathetic arrangement for handling our nuclear weapons. They're just sitting out here for 40, 45 years, just out in the elements. It's not attached to a plane. It's not in a hangar. It's not protected in any way except for some, cheesy Home Depot tarp. That if you were to put this onto a plane, you run the risk of nuclearizing the entire aircraft. And as a result of my stepfather's work, we have readjusted, or I should say, made serious adjustments to how our nuclear weapons are handled. That's because he was curious and he didn't stop at what he was asked. You see what I'm saying? He was curious and he looked at, hey, what's under that tarp? Oh, there's 1,000 pounds of nuclear warheads under that tarp just sitting out in the open. How long's it been there? 15 years? That's probably not good. Now, most people who have their, day jobs and they just wash the dishes, make the burgers, or fill in the monthly reports or whatever it is, and then they go home, they don't care. Had my stepfather done that, I'm sure that we would be in a nuclear disaster. But instead, somebody like my stepfather with a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of oomph was like, this probably isn't a good idea. Guys at the Senate Arms Committee, here's what I recommend, right? Now, they didn't take all of his recommendations at face value. They did a little research, a little investigation, and turned around and realized, oh my God, we about blew our damn selves up. And that's what we need more of. We need less people shouting and yelling about crap they don't understand. If you don't understand how something works, shut the hell up and learn about it first, right? If you've never been served a warrant, then you really can't speak to a warrant. If you've never been pregnant, you really can't speak to what it is to be pregnant. So maybe a little bit of education before we open the mouth. And Ronnie's back this morning. I'm not sure. Kids stands outside, points up, airplane. Hell, he's 14 years old. For a second there, I thought you were thinking like Tattoo from, what was that? Fantasy Island. The pain. Oh, I see the pain. Of course, there was a hell of a meme. I think Facebook had just come into existence, and the little dude had unfortunately taken his own life for whatever reason, and then people came up with the wonderful meme of the pain, and it was just horrible. But that's who we are. We are we are horrible. In a lot of ways, we are absolutely horrible. In a lot of ways, we have it going on. Unfortunately, our education system is not allowing that to be explored any further than what allows you to push the buttons and make money for the profiteers at the top of the food chain, like Jeff Bezos and all these other people who have no idea what it's like to stress whether you're going to put gas in the car or food, right? So I tell you what, I've gotten really, really accustomed to ramen and beans and rice just to keep this station on the air. And that's fine, because I've learned more from this radio station than I would have in 2 years of college. That's my curiosity being fed, and I don't need food for that. So, I tell you what, guys, when we come back, we're going to have a fun guest. And I have a feeling he has a subject for me. If not, it's going to be fun anyway. What wicked indigestion, causing a lot of distraction. Let the music roll. We'll be right back with Dan Roman from Full Circle Fitness right after these messages. So don't go nowhere. The Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. Be right back after this.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. We're learning new details from the district attorney about a fatal shooting last month in Brunswick County. Quasi Walker was shot and killed in Leland on July 31st. After reviewing evidence in the case, District Attorney John David said DeAndre Davis was legally justified in using deadly force against Walker. According to the DA, it stemmed from an altercation that escalated between the two. Davis apparently had been held at gunpoint and was severely beaten until he got a gun and shot Walker. Davis then jumped from a window and called for help. After 7 years, a verdict has been reached in the trial of a Wilmington man accused of shooting and killing another man. Antonio Beatty has been found not guilty of first-degree murder in the death of 25-year-old Carlton Walker Whitley. Whitley was shot and killed in July of 2015 in a parking lot near the corner of Darlington and Medding Roads. After 7 years of delays, Beatty's case went to trial last week. According to New Hanover County's District Attorney Ben David and Beatty's attorney, the evidence presented by the state did not prove its case against Beatty beyond a reasonable doubt. The UNCW Seahawks are taking flight in a new way. The Federal Aviation Administration has selected the university for a special training initiative. UNCW has been teaching drone classes since 2017 and is now a part of the FAA Unmanned Aircraft Systems Collegiate Training Initiative. It's part of the Certificate Program for Geospatial Intelligence. That certificate is offered to students and members of the community. UNCW Professor Dr. Narcissa Percope will lead the initiative. And a recent spike in vandalism and damage at a Wilmington park is prompting police and other officials to hold a community meeting. Wade Park is located on Bethel Road. It covers nearly 17 acres and includes a playground, picnic shelter, bike racks, parking, and restrooms. If you'd like to share your input and concerns, a meeting will be held at the park next Tuesday afternoon between 4 and 6 p.m. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Drier conditions in store for us on this Wednesday. Although we are going to be under mostly cloudy skies, temperatures are going to be below the average, getting into the middle 80s, lower 80s for the immediate coastline, and the humidity still sticking around with the stalled front just off to our south. Not going to rule out an isolated shower over the course of the day today. As for tonight, our temperatures dropping back down into the upper 60s and the lower 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAY-TV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Have you heard about Cape Fear's only fitness community exclusively for those over 50? At Full Circle Fitness, we understand that goals, lifestyles, and our bodies change through the decades, which is why our Living Fit After 50 is custom designed to help you get a safe, effective workout without spending hours in the gym. Get started today. Call 910-399-8350 or visit FullCircleFitnessNC.com.
When might you be buzzed? When you suddenly love everything.
You guys! I love this song! I love these nachos. I love our kickball league! Ugh! I love this guy! What's your name? You know what I'd love? A ride when it's time to head out.
If you see a buzzed warning sign, call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I love your car. Is this real leather?
This week on All Things Brunswick, our guest will be Chad Adams. Chad will be joining us to discuss recent events in the news and much more. Join us 6 p.m. Tuesday right here on The Big Talker.
See, I'm going to have to put you up on my TikTok.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have to do that. And I forget that we're online sometimes, and I hit the button and there's music. Hey, welcome back to the Asylum, the refuge right here in the world gone mad. A bunch of guys on the radio here that have no idea what it's like to be pregnant. I know what it's like to be with somebody who is pregnant. I know what it's like to go through the childbearing process as the father in the process. And they even tried to at one time, right? I thought this was cute as hell. They gave me the sympathy belly thing, right? That the other guy there was.
Yeah, I wore that.
Right. And some dude actually wore it out in public. He's like, oh, this isn't so bad. I could get used to it. And, he wore it for 20 minutes, right? We're wearing it for an hour or two a day. And I still turned to her, and I was like, okay, this does suck. I admit. But there is no way I can understand what it's like to have 20 pounds sitting on my bladder 24 hours a day, right? There are things
you can just drink a lot of beer and get a beer belly, and it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, but I don't. What, you're gonna punch me in the gut every 10 minutes like a baby kicking? We just cannot understand. Let's just start there, right? I have no problem admitting that there are some experiences in this life that I am simply not going to have.
Well, the counter to that too is there are some that we men have that women can't understand too. So
now, if
the beauty of it all is that we're different. And we should be celebrating our differences, not trying to be the same, because we're not the same.
Okay, I got a question for you then.
What's that?
The athlete formerly known as Jenner. What was his name when he was on the Wheaties box?
Oh, Bruce Jenner.
Yeah,
be careful.
The athlete formerly known as Bruce Jenner has transitioned into a new lifestyle, has shown up in the club with his daughter in the same outfit as his daughter, which had to be awkward as hell. But he's not going to experience menopause, is he?
No, he's not, because he doesn't have the correct hormonal glands. I'm trying to be polite with it.
Right. So at some point...
Now, wait a minute now. Though there is a point to be made here, which is people know about menopause, which is ironically named, right? Menopause. But there's also menopause. We go through it too. We have our hormonal
the drop in testosterone at age.
Yeah. The difference, though, is for women, it comes on not all at once, but pretty much in a very short period, right? Men, we start having changes in our 20s, mid 20s. So it's far more gradual, but it's there. And when
our
you
responses are different.
They are.
Women
So when you
tend to
hit
like
50 or 60,
sweat and get all hot flash. Men go buy sports cars.
no,
And guns.
I'm talking physically. I hate to tell you, women buy sports cars too. See,
that's right, the Miata.
Yeah, there you go. The quintessential, yes. And I'm thinking about a boss I had about 20 years ago who turned 50 and went out and bought a Miata. You nailed it.
Yep.
A red convertible one, no less.
With matching wheels and a purse.
Yeah.
Because they usually have, like, the guys have driving gloves or maybe a fancy driving hat that they prefer when they get in their particular car. But women, man, they'll match the outfit.
Oh, everything's got to match.
I mean,
well, because I can't. Just ask my wife. If my wife doesn't match my colors up, I'm dead. Because part of the problem too is I don't care. So whether it matches or not, my goal now.
As long as I'm not going to get arrested for showing my naked bits, I'm good.
Yeah, there you go. My goal is to have all black clothes so that I don't have to worry about matching. But then I was informed that there's different colors of black. And I went, what? There's only 8 colors. Roy G. Biv.
So, as a tech, most of my clothes are all black. And there's been consternation where I show up at a gig and the girlfriend of my duo partner is like, don't you have anything else?
I've had that same thing happen.
This is every color in the rainbow. How can you not tell me I'm being inclusive? I have red, blue, green, purple. Yeah, I have every color represented by every race and identity on this planet represented in this shirt.
You're just like me. I always wore a black shirt to gigs. In fact, I remember I bought 6 or 7 of them because you know how it is during a gig. Sometimes you start sweating. You got to change shirts in between sets.
Yeah.
So I'd bring 2 or 3 with me. They were all identical. And to this day, I still do that. When I buy, people laugh at me because they're like, you're wearing the same clothes as yesterday. No, I'm not. I just happen when I buy a pair of shorts, I buy 5 of them at once and they're identical.
Yeah.
You know,
because I know they're all going to fit the same. They're all going to look the same. They're all going to stretch the same. And they're all going to be disposed of at the same time.
And it's funny because you look at some of the elites out there. Mark Zuckerberg does that. He wears the same color shirt every day. He wears a T-shirt that's gray.
And I think,
other than when he's called in front of Congress, that is.
The guy from Apple, Jobs, he would wear the same turtleneck.
Same, yeah. They all had that belief that I got better things to do with my life than worry about what clothes to wear. So I'll simplify. And actually, if you think about it, it's smart, right? And it's why I've adapted it because I don't want to have to think. I have different color shirts, but my primary color for everything is black because somebody told me that it matches everything. So I didn't have to worry about it.
Unless it's another black.
But then, well, that's what I was thinking. About 3 weeks ago, we were having this discussion at the studio during the workout because that's what we do. We have fun discussions and we go off. We're working out hard, but we're all over the place. So we had this whole discussion about colors and how there's, dozens of shades of black. And I'm like, no, there's black.
That's what I was aware of.
Yeah. Well, and then I brought up the whole Roy G. Biv and blah, blah, blah. It's just somewhere on that spectrum is a little different, right? The color spectrum, but it's still black. But anyway, long story short, it's funny because, circling back to the menopause thing, so many people really don't understand how much of an effect that has. And this was just something in a conversation that's kind of come up now. When you get over 50 and really over 60 as a guy, that's when you start really noticing things. And I use myself as an example. I was a highly competitive rower from about 45 to 53.4. The difference from 50 to 54, 55 versus my late 40s is mind-boggling to me to this day. And it's gotten a little bit worse, but nothing like there was a big drop off there in my performance. And my training was exactly the same. My nutrition was spot on. I did everything right, but my performance decreased. And you see this with professional athletes too, right? The ones in their 25, 30, 35, depending on the sport, that's their prime. But at some point, football, it's usually about 28, 29, baseball, late 30s, basketball, late 30s. They have a big drop off. Now, there's still, you look at somebody like LeBron James, he's an elite athlete still, but he's nothing like he was 10 years ago. And people don't understand that happens to men. They get it with women. They get it, no issues with women. They understand that. But the male hormones are, it's always, I always crack up
Suck
about
it up,
women.
Marine.
Yeah, you hear women say all the time, it's my hormones. But if a guy says it's my hormones, he gets his butt handed to him, right?
Suck it up, Marine.
Yeah. But we all have that as human beings. We all go through different things. And, you brought up Bruce Jenner, and forgive me because I don't know what he changed his name.
I think it's Caitlyn or something like that.
I care so little about it because he's a celebrity. I don't care what celebrities do, right? He wants to change his body. You go ahead, dude. Or dudette, whatever you are.
Just don't do it on tax money. You got the money, you want to have at it. You can tattoo whatever you want.
My viewpoint is anyone wants to do anything with their body, they can do it. As long as it's not affecting someone else directly, for example, like you said, having the taxpayers pay for it, right?
That's one. Because they're allowing that in prison there for a minute.
They are. But when you look at that and you talk about like what you mentioned is, will he go through menopause? No, he won't, but he will go, and he probably already has. I think he's in his 60s, isn't he? He's going through menopause. But the key thing is, he was an elite decathlete. I remember watching him in the 76 Olympics. If you looked at him now, if he were to go compete in any sport, doesn't matter, versus a 60-year-old female, same age, even same build as far as height and weight, he would destroy them. Even though and I know I'm going to get in trouble for calling him he. It's not, because that's, you can't do that either. Whatever. He, she, whatever he wants to identify with, because that's the term. Whatever. Biologically, as you said, he's got the right chromosomes for competition. And men are always going to outdo women in competition. Are there exceptions to that rule? Absolutely there are. But they're literally 1 in a million or 10 million. And the perfect example of this is back when I was in high school, we had a girl come out for the football team. And she was not a tiny girl. And to her credit, she did all the work, but we would destroy her. Like I would pull up. Like she was playing linebacker, so I was at that time.
Man.
But I would, she would come around. We would run, say, a sweep, and I would come around the corner as a lineman, and there she was. And I would pull up because
you're trying not to crush her.
I would destroy her. I outweighed her by probably 100 pounds, which happens with men too, right? Many times I hit linebackers that weighed 100 pounds less than me, but they can take the brunt of that force much better physically. Their makeup will allow them to take that blow much better. Could they get hurt? Absolutely. I'm not saying they can't. But her, I would told her I would.
You didn't want to go to jail for assault and battery.
Exactly, because I would erase her. There would be nothing left. There would be a splot of blood on the ground if I full hit her. And that's why when you look at, say, why aren't there women in the NFL? It's not that they don't have necessarily the skills, but again, they're not going to be as fast or anything. But it's because they can't take the punishment there. Basketball, similar thing, right? People don't want to talk about this stuff. They focus on the physical differences as far as men are taller. Men tend to be heavier. Yes, I get that. But when you put it all together, you look at everything. And I also think mental makeup is part of it. I don't know if you ever played football, but on a football field and in the locker room to a lesser extent, what we say to each other, if you ever heard it in polite society, you'd be appalled. I always tell the story when I was a nose tackle for many years. So I was over the center, and I would have discussions with the center while he's trying to listen to the snap count about what his sister and I did the prior evening, and stuff like that. My goal was always to throw him off at least for two. He'd miss the snap count at least twice during a game. And I was very good. I mean, I can trash talk with the best of them. But in this society now, if you did that and there was a woman there, and I played co-ed flag football at one point, it's totally different. And that's not in any way to disparage women. They just simply aren't built the same as men. And we need to acknowledge that.
And encourage them to participate in their own competitions independent. Now, do you think there should be a new group where trans can compete trans? So you have a men's group, a women's group, like let's say a basketball team. You have a women's basketball team, a men's basketball team, and a trans team.
I personally would not have a problem with that whatsoever.
But once you're on the trans team, no matter which trans you are, you cannot complain if you get completely smoked.
Right. There's no good solution, I think, that everyone's going to accept. Welcome to the world these days, right?
Right.
But I do think that's probably, I've put some thought in it. I think that's probably the best solution at this point, to be fair to everyone as best you can. Because men definitely are on a different, I don't want to say level, but playing field, pun intended. Women have their appropriate playing field.
And they can smoke us on a number of things, like their ability to, the way their body bends at a different point than our own.
They're far more flexible.
They give them advantages in things like gymnastics and tennis and things that require incredible limber and reach and stretch that the male body just can't quite do.
Correct. So if you watch gymnastics, which I don't, I turn it off immediately, but I know enough about it. My wife's an ex-gymnast to know if you actually look at the events they compete in, they're pretty much entirely different events. The male events are focused more on strength.
Yep.
Right.
The rings, the
rings in
bars,
particular, right? And I said to my wife at one point, I said, why don't women do the rings? And she said, we can't hold ourselves up.
Not that long.
Not even close. Women are, the thing that people also don't understand is women have most of their, quotes, strength in their lower body. Has to do with childbirth, right? Women are generally stronger lower body. Men are stronger upper body. Now, again, that's generally speaking. Yes, I know there's millions of exceptions, blah, blah, blah. But generally, that's where it comes in. So holding yourself up on the rings, I'm amazed. The amount of strength that a male gymnast has to have to do the Iron Cross or whatever it's called.
Yeah, just try it one time. That's all I say.
I have tried it.
No, I meant like anybody else. Anybody else who's like, oh, man, that guy's just a chump. No. Your arms start shaking immediately.
I postulate that pound for pound, male gymnasts are stronger than any strong man because when they put themselves in that particular position and hold it. I've seen strongmen, one of the competitions they'll do, and it's called various things, but they'll have weights where they have their arms out and they have to hold them. Okay. Yes, I get that, but it's not your body weight and you're not up in the air.
Right.
Right.
And you're not shaking like a leaf.
I tried it once. I lasted about 0.0005 of a second,
Right.
And at the time I could do pull-ups. Not that I was ever great at it, but I could do pull-ups. I was benching, 300, 400, 500, whatever it was. I don't remember. Not even close. I literally got in position and dropped. But when
and the thing is, our school used to have the rings on the playground. Like every swing set had a set of rings. And actually, I don't remember anybody being able to do much more than a pull-up and then let go. That was about it.
Pretty much. And there's some amazing exercises, by the way, you can do with rings, but I digress. But yeah, then you look at the female events, like, for example, the floor, right?
Oh, man, yeah.
I watch that and I marvel at their ability. Now, could the guy, again, I'm not a gymnastics expert, I freely admit it, but you look at the guys, and I've seen them do the tumbling routines. They're not as good at it as the women are. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses, biologically speaking. And the problem we have now is in society, we don't want to accept that. We want everybody to be absolutely the same. The classic NPC, non-player character, right? We're all identical. We're not identical, and we need to accept that. And we need to celebrate that we're not identical, because why do we all want to be identical?
One size fits all. I mean, that gets into a whole nother conversation with like trying to buy clothes for a person my size. You know, it's like the entire clothing industry is tilted towards the obese.
Because that's where the market is right now.
Well, that's where the people are, right? 80% of the people or so
80% of the public is overweight, and 40% is morbidly obese. So
you're not going to find pants for normal people.
Yeah.
I even contacted them directly. They're like, well, you can place a special order with the factory. It usually runs about 35% more than I was like, well, that's fair.
And 40, 50 years ago, it was the exact opposite.
Right. I'm not using twice the material. Never mind. Sorry. It's aggravating.
Boy, we're crossing the lines here like crazy, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. If I'm going to get slammed on YouTube, let's make it worth it.
Yeah, let's go down in flames, right? It's funny because I've looked at like how that's transitioned as far as the marketing goes, and how they view that. It's exactly what you said, right? You are the exception, not the rule. So you have a tougher time. My ex-wife is another one. She was 5'11". Her inseam was like 35.
Yeah.
She had to buy men's pants, and the waist was so big on her, and in order to get the length, they just don't make them.
For me to get a 36-inch inseam, I have to have like a 50-inch waist. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. But from the manufacturer's standpoint or the store standpoint, that's where the money is, right? They're going to target that particular group because there's just not enough income coming in from people like you, because society is so far overweight. It isn't funny. And it's, I look at that and say, where are we going to be in another 50 years? It's only going to get worse.
Well, I bet in 50 years, the advancement of battery technology is to the point that we will be taking our smart shopper carts from Walmart on the highway.
Oh, I think we're pretty much there, aren't we?
We can just get our tubby little butt out of the bed, just pop it right onto a little roller magic machine, and you can go to the bathroom, you can go to your lunch, you can go to the kitchen, you can go to Walmart, you can go to work, you can get on the freeway, all without ever leaving your little cushy butt seat. And that terrifies me.
They've now come out with food deliveries where they literally come in your house and hand it to you on your couch. I mean, it's out there. The Matrix, remember the Matrix, where we were all in our little pods?
Yeah, and just intravenous feeding.
We're not that far from that now. If you really think about it, we're not that far from
Ghost in the Shell has a great series on that, where because of the implants in our brain, we just connect to the internet through like a little portal in the back of the skull, and you can actually receive your nutrients and aminos and that sort of thing through a similar port, and literally die while plugged in, and allowing your consciousness to merge with. And it's a really bizarre concept, but the way that they're approaching the concept of not the decline, but how the elderly are treated and ignored, that for them to have any sort of social or meaningful contact in their lives, that they would abandon the physical world for any sort of contact in the digital world, to the point that they had pretty much killed themselves just for the need of physical, or I should say, some sort of spiritual connection with another being.
Yep.
Now,
it's called the metaverse. They've already created it. It's called the metaverse. Right?
But my concern, I guess, is more about the abandonment of the humanity to get to that point. That is not necessarily that, we have nursing homes, and if somebody is no longer what's the word I'm looking, productive, they can just shove them in one of these little boxes, and they'll get fed, and they'll get wiped, and they'll get cleaned, but they're not going to have a fulfilling experience.
No, they won't, because...
Now, is that what's happening in the real world? Is this why people are turning to fentanyl and crack and whatever the hell else to get further away from the reality that they seem to not be enjoying?
I think that's exactly what's going on. You just nailed my thought process on the whole thing. I think that you're seeing, as a society, we can't accept what's happening It's subconsciously, right? Our brains are going, I need to have tactile function. I need
to somehow compete or compare to what I see on somebody else's social media.
Well,
like
that's
this
the other.
person looks all happy and they're touring the world and having a great time and meeting all these great people and eating all this great food. And I'm sitting here toiling my ass away and eating ramen noodles and beans and rice. And the only thing I can visit is my backyard.
Yep. And we went through 2 years of that where you couldn't even leave your house. So it just exploded that even further. And people have turned to substances, we'll call them, to try and, I think, navigate their way through it. When you take away things like smell, touch, and all that, which is what's happening, right? We as human beings, biologically, we need that. So when we can't have that, our brains don't know what to do. So people are now, like you said, they're turning to various substances. Don't forget, they're on social media because you get a positive interaction on social media. They know you're going to get that dopamine hit. Yeah. Which is why those companies have the algorithms the way they do, because the more hits they can give you, you put up a post, somebody likes it, you feel good, right? They don't. Now you look at YouTube, they have the like and dislike. If you see a like, you feel good. If you see a dislike, most people are like, I'm an awful person, right? That's why they hide the dislikes now. They knew in the algorithm that it was having a negative effect on people's brains. And that's why they went that route. They're not stupid people, right? The people that run these things, they know exactly what they're doing. And they are conditioning us to get all that tactile sensation that we need through, as you said, like a connection of some sort to the internet. They're already looking at embedding things in our bodies that will connect us to the internet. We're going to become the Borg, as I always say. For those who follow Star Trek, we're not that far from it. We're within, I would say, 2 to 3 generations that will be there. I'm not going to live long enough to see it, but I could see by the end of this century where you are implanted with something in your brain that directly connects you to the internet, and we become then a hive.
Because I know what you're thinking. Now, let's turn to, this is a concern that your fitness center is actually, and your show is actually focused on, living fit after 50. Mm-hmm. When you encounter new clients that come in that are aged a little bit more, they're no longer in their youthful prime.
We like to say they're in the fall of their life.
And do you find that there's a response that they weren't expecting? In their, they come in and they're thinking, I need to do a little workout so I don't, slip and break my hip or whatever. So they're coming in with a very pragmatic mindset. But do they ever encounter something that makes them kind of go, wow, I didn't know I needed this type of connection or this type of interaction?
2 things.
Yeah.
There's 2 things that almost universally we hear, usually 1 to 3 months in. You're right. They come in, they're looking more at the physical aspect, right? I need to get stronger. I need to improve my balance, mobility, whatever it might be. The 2 things that they find that shocks them, and I've actually done videos on this on YouTube. 1, their confidence goes up, just in general. In life. I'm not talking the confidence that they can do a physical exercise.
Like going upstairs without holding the handrail.
Yeah, not that. I'm talking about just they feel more confident in general. All right.
Wow. Okay.
And then the other thing is they find out that they feel happier. Because at our studio, it's very social, right? We talk through the workouts. As I said earlier, we're working hard. Don't get me wrong. We're not standing around, but it's interacting, human beings interacting, right? Having conversations. They're not getting that anywhere else, especially the older ones, right? Our average age of our morning groups is probably, I have to run it again, but it's probably somewhere around 70.
Wow.
Our evening groups are a little bit younger. It's probably around 60, but our morning groups, we have, the oldest is around 78, 79. The average is, I would say, right around 70. They don't have that interaction. So, a lot of them live alone. a lot of them, and I will tell you this, and people don't like hearing this, but as you get older, your kids tend to forget you, right?
They got their own thing going on.
Yeah. Walk into any nursing home and you'll see it. So having that ability to conversate, to engage with each other, and when they see that and they feel how much better they feel, they're happier, right? That shocks them, and we see it. I would say 9 times out of 10, TK, that's where they will say to us, I had no idea that that's where I was going to see the most benefit. Confidence and that engagement makes them happier. You don't get that at a regular gym. What do most people do at the gym? And I do this myself.
Put on their headphones and ignore everybody.
And leave me the F alone, right? There's one thing I hate when I'm working out at a big box gym, which is people being around me or talking to me. I'm there to work out.
Yep. And I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone.
Yes. So you don't get that interaction. And I've worked in big box gyms. I mean, I worked at the Y for years. And I, as a trainer, I would just go around and say, hey, how you doing? And some people were really turned off by it. Some were engaged by it. But the big box, that's their modality, right? Headphones on, I'm doing my workout in and out. Whereas we're more social. And that's where I think, again, it skews me as my thinking in general society, that I think we need to have far, far more social engagement. Instead, we're all sitting on our couch with our Netflix or whatever on, stuffing our face with delivered food that's been left at the doorway. We don't even interact with the delivery drivers anymore. We become so isolated, and you're seeing the suicide rates going up. You're seeing drug use has skyrocketed. It's all interconnected, and we need to address that as a society. One of the things that I talk about being in, the health industry, the health and fitness industry, is that this stuff really concerns me, because our children's children are going to be, as we talked about earlier, they're going to be in the matrix if we don't address this, and unfortunately,
when you were younger.
Yeah.
When you were younger and you were starting, I would say, mid school, high school is when you first started working out, right?
I was about 11, 12 years old, Pop Warner football. And
it was a social event then, meaning when you went into the gym, you didn't have the mindset of headphone, leave me alone.
Oh, hell no.
It was your group. It was your social moment.
It was 30 or 40 of us guys learning how to lift weights, pounding iron, cheering each other on, ragging on each other like you wouldn't believe. That's gone away, right? One of the things that
I don't know that it went away. I think it went into sort of a remission.
Well, it went into social media. It's in the social media.
And then when they get older, as you're discovering now, the people in their 60s and 70s, when they come back for their health, they're actually reconnecting with a social group, I guess, right? That it's not necessarily their Thursday bridge club, but it's certainly a different, a new or a unique, right? Because we used to have these. We would go to coffee, we would go to open mics, we would do all these other things when we were younger. And then once we get kids and mortgage and family and everything else, and we have less time to do this, suddenly we're flooded with all kinds of interactions that we may or may not want. And then as we get older and we're finally empty nesters, and we're getting to the point that it's like, okay, my social life now consists of, oh crap, I don't have any social interactions. I'm going to go join a gym, right? And start cycling with a group of people and have conversation with other people, whether I agree with them or not. At least now there's more exercise for the brain that wasn't there previously.
You just picked up on something I was going to bring up, which is it's that mental and I would put emotional connection, right? That's what...
Because you would develop empathy that if somebody else is having a harder time, that there would actually be a moment that it's like, I feel you. And even whether as a trainer or somebody else in the class, they're like, I've had that. So they don't feel alone.
As a trainer, the thing that juices me, the reason I do what I do, is when I see someone... I'll use a perfect example. About 2-3 weeks ago, we had a woman. Her name is Kathy. She's 72, 3. She started with us January, February, somewhere in there. And she struggled with walking, struggled with her balance, and so on. She's gotten progressively better. She's engaged with the group, by the way. We call her the mayor sometimes. But the other week, 2-3 weeks ago, she was deadlifting, and she deadlifted a barbell with, I forget the exact weight, but let's say 75 pounds on it. It was somewhere around there. Seeing her reaction to that was amazing, right? It's why I do what I do, because as I talked about, that her confidence just shot up. My God, look what I'm able to do. But more than that, the people around her cheering her on. You know,
that's not happening.
Oh
in the
my
nursing
God,
home.
look what you just did. And we see this all the time. People think as they get older, they have to limit themselves. No, it's the exact opposite. When you limit yourself, you're just going to exacerbate that limitation. When you aren't afraid to fail, this is one thing I talk about all the time. Stop being afraid to fail, because we get better when we fail. We don't get better when we
It's the wrong notes that teach us.
Exactly. And that, when you see that happen, it's why I do what I do, right? I ain't doing it for the money, trust me. I can make a hell of a lot more money doing other things.
Washing dishes at a restaurant.
Pretty much at this point. When you have that moment and you see, I've had instances where, we'll have 20 people and somebody will PR on it, let's say a deadlift or a squat or whatever, and the whole room just erupts cheering. When we had a studio up north, we used to, every once in a while, we would get together at night and we would try and PR. And there was a hairdresser next door, and the hairdresser came over and go, "What is going on over here? Are you having a huge party?" Because there was just cheer after cheer, and people were just, it's why I do what I do, right? They were so engaged with each other, and that's what we've lost in society. Especially as we get older, like we talked about, when you get over 50, 60, and especially 70, we tend to isolate ourselves more and more. And it's the exact opposite. It's why I admire the Asian cultures, because they revere the older people. They don't put them in nursing homes. The children and the grandchildren take care of them. We need to get back to more of that. How? I don't know the answer to that.
But there does seem to be a respect, certainly for, in some cases, I just watched a video last night where a guy had been whittling just for fun that he learned as a child and had been through his career. And every now and again, just off to the side after dinner, he'd be whittling little things just for himself. And now he's in his 90s and he's still whittling, and people are amazed at his whittling, right? Because he can't really, he's not employable.
Mm-hmm.
But it still fascinates people that he's doing this still. And it's like, I don't, his point of view is like, it's what I do. They work with their hands all the way to the end of life. And I find that to be unique, that here it's like, we have competition rocking. I mean, is that what's, our older generation, we put them in a battery powered chair. We come and wipe them. We don't let them do as much for themselves as could be. Like, my mom is feisty as hell, and at 87, she's the one doing her own groceries. Thank you very much. You can open the door, but get out of my way. I got this.
Yep.
And she still plays piano every day. So these are the types of things that, and similar to having a physical relationship with yourself, meaning, lifting or cardio or whatever it is, these other payoffs, I guess, or benefits, these side effects, are just not expected.
But they should be expected. That's the point, right? When you think back 100 years ago, we were primarily an agrarian society. You were still farming in your 70s or 80s, because if you didn't, you weren't eating.
Or if you made it to 70.
Now we've become to the point, and it started right after World War II primarily, where, as we've talked about, you shunner the older people, the older generations off, get them out of sight. They're not productive, in quotes, which I don't agree with. So
encouraged. Because I know composers that were still writing in their 80s, but they can't be a business person?
Like, let's use Paul McCartney as an example. Now, musical genius, I think we would both agree with that. In his 20s, and 30s.
Now, he was curious and he continued to study, unlike some of his bandmates.
But if you go see him in concert, and I saw him 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it was, when he was in his mid-70s, he's 80 now. He did a 3.5-hour show, did not take a single break. Is his voice what it was in the 60s? Not even close. Is his bass playing what it was in the 60s? I heard some misses here and there, right? You know, you're a musician, I'm a musician. We pick up on that stuff. But who cares? He was running around that stage. He was having the time of his life. You could tell that. The audience was just juiced. And I'm sitting there and I was looking at it and I'm going, this dude is 75, 76, whatever he was. And, you know, I'm 20 odd years younger than him and I can't do what he's doing, you know? And it's because his mindset is, I'm not old.
Nope.
I am going to do whatever the hell I want, and I'm going to be good at it. Maybe not what he was at his 20s, but, you know, the best he can be right now. He's going to not just add years to his life, he's going to add life to his years. That's a saying that Lori and I use all the time. Mm-hmm. And when people start thinking that way, and it's one of the mindsets that I try and get people to adopt. Schwarzenegger is another one. He has changed his life in his 70s. Because, you know, when he was the governor, he got out of shape. He got woefully out of shape. He brought it back and said, I'm not going to let my age, I'm not going to let my age stop me. And he is in phenomenal shape. Does he look like he did in his 20s? Hell no. Right. But his mindset, that people always ask me, what's the number one thing I need to do to either lose weight, get in shape, whatever term you want to use. And the number one thing you need to do is fix your mindset.
Get your head right.
Right. Because if you don't do that, I don't care what workout you're doing, what diet, it is irrelevant. It will not work. And that's why so many people fail at them. So when Lori and I work with people, we focus on that. We try and get mindset to change. Do we succeed? We do, but not anywhere near the level I wish we did.
Those successes are going to be self-evident. They will present themselves. The ones that really fail are going to leave and then blame you for it.
Of course, and that's what they do, right? As a trainer, we get blamed always. Well, it didn't work. Well, no, you didn't apply your mindset, right?
Same with sobriety. Man, I just can't get sober. Well, that's a you problem.
I can't force you to eat right.
4 million other people did it this year. I don't know why you're so unique.
It's so interesting, and it's things trainers talk about all the time. Younger trainers struggle with this because they want to help everybody. Their heart is in the right place, right? You don't become a trainer unless you have a lot of empathy and you want to help people, because you ain't going to get rich. Let me be very clear on that.
Or you've been on the field when a football player blew out his knee, and you're like, oh, man, I heard that from here. How can I help him off the field, right?
Yeah. Good analogy. But you know, it's so hard for us as trainers when we give someone the information and we work with them and we know they can but they just can't flip that mental switch. And that's a lot of people, right? Like Lori and I succeed more than the average, but I'll be honest with you. You know, when people start a diet or try and lose weight or exercise, about 5% succeed. That's the general number. So for every 100 that go on a diet or whatever, 5 of them will succeed.
Oh, like the New Year's resolution.
I'm going to join
the Lynn. I'm going to get fit, and I'm going to make it all the way to the 3rd of January.
Yep. Less than 5% make it past April.
Man.
And actually, I don't agree with that number. I actually think it's much lower. I think it's more like 2%, because I don't view it as, when they do those studies, they look at how far into the year did they get. My argument would be, did you actually hit your goal, and did you maintain that goal 3 to 5 years later? That's true success, right? So what Lori and I can do, and when we work with people, and it's why if you ever follow us on Facebook, we talk about mindset constantly. And people will say to me, or our newsletter, why do you talk about it so much? Because it is the key. There is no diet, there is no exercise program that is going to get you results if you don't flip the switch mentally and emotionally, for that matter. And I talk about it constantly because we know as trainers, that's what is the difference between succeeding and not.
Now,
And
I hate to be difficult because it is 17 after. We've blown right through this thing. I have one more.
Wow.
Yeah, that's going to tie this up in a nice, neat little bow, referring to your guest this Friday.
Yes,
It's probably going to embody or at least reiterate much of what you're saying.
Yes. So we're having.
Like, how do you become what's his award? He's a award-winning trainer.
He is a Hall of Fame trainer. He is in the Fitness Hall of Fame.
Okay, now I know what it takes to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I will never be there.
That's not a real Hall of Fame.
So how the hell
anyway.
how do you, is this a competition? Hey, I trained 50 people this year. You only trained 38, so I'm the Hall of Fame. How do you, that just seems like the Hall of Fame of Brussels sprouts. How do you determine who or what gets into the Hall of Fame?
I don't know the specific criteria, but I will speak. It's Greg Justice who's coming on, and he's written probably a dozen or more books. The man is the nicest man I've ever met in my life, honestly. And I'm not saying that because he's coming on to guest. He really is.
Even I think me, I'm a liberal. I mean, I'm nice.
Way better than you, no offense intended. I think what the criteria, and I'll use him as an example, and again, I'm from the outside looking in. I think the criteria that they primarily look at is how did you affect someone's life, people's lives.
Okay.
That's the number one thing. And Greg is the epitome of that. I look up to Greg. Greg and I are basically the same age. I'll ask him on the show Friday at 1 p.m., by the way.
Right here on the
I'll ask him his exact age. My wife knows it, but I think he's like 62, 63, somewhere around there. He's been in business as a trainer since the 80s, much like myself. But I'm good. He's great. I'll be the first to tell you that. No one can interact with someone. Most of his clients have been with him 30 or 40 years. Once he gets someone as a client, they don't leave. He's that good. And he's going to be talking about that. We've got some really good questions because he's also talking about his book, Jack LaLanne. He's done a biography, along with Jack LaLanne's wife, who I believe was Elaine. So he's going to be talking about that also, but it's also the mindset, which we've kind of talked about. Jack LaLanne lived into his 90s and was doing amazing things, right? So Greg will talk about that a little bit and how having that mindset. We got a lot of good stuff. This is going to be a good show. If you can't tell, I'm super excited about it.
Friday at 1, right here on the Big Talker Network, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, 1 p.m. Friday with replays throughout the week.
And you can call in and ask questions.
Call in. And Greg would love to take questions, so call in.
Or chat. We got the chat room open. That'll be open and running.
Facebook. And, you can ask away. Greg, as I said, he would give you, we always use that saying, we'll give you the shirt off his back. He will do that. Not that you and I wouldn't, but he would give you the shirt off his back and then go get another one out of his closet and hand you that one too.
No, I'm waiting for you to wash it and return it. Because chances are it was a band t-shirt that I worked very hard to earn. You can use it, but you can't have it.
There you go. Now, there are very few people in this world that I hold in high esteem. I would put Greg right at the top, honestly. He's that nice and good, just a good person. And I'm super excited we're having him on the show. And so listen in, folks. You're gonna get a lot of really good insight information. He'll also be talking about his book, which again talks to the mindset, right? I have my heroes. Jack LaLanne is Greg's hero. Mine would be Jack LaLanne to a somewhat of an extent, but mine was more like the Richard Simmons. I admire the hell out of Richard Simmons. I would love to get him on, but apparently he's not doing well. Because was Richard Simmons the best trainer? Was Jack LaLanne the best trainer? No. I mean, technically, right? But as far as getting people to move, is there anybody better?
Yeah, that's
I
all
would
it
argue
took.
no.
Even if you're running away from them, you were at least moving.
Trainers mock Richard Simmons. Oh, his workouts were crap. Well, I don't necessarily agree. They
But at
weren't the
least he was
great-
getting people to work, to move.
My God, literally millions upon millions of overweight people started working out because of Richard Simmons.
Even if they were just shuffling their feet while standing up, they at least got the heartbeat up.
Moved.
Yep.
Yes. And you look at Jack LaLanne, right? I remember as a young lad, 10, 12 years old, Jack LaLanne being on the Merv Griffin show.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Mike Douglas and all that.
He used to have a 6 o'clock show every morning. Grandma came to visit. Grandma's in her 80s, 85, 87 years old. And Jack's doing his little patter. He's like, you can do it. You're pushing through. You can do this.
Exactly.
And my grandmother's responding, I got this, Jack. I'm with you, Jack.
That's a Hall of Fame trainer right there, right? It's not the best technique. It's not even the best knowledge. I'll even say that and acknowledge that. It's the best ability to engage with someone and get them to see their potential. It's what I strive for. And I'm good. I'm very good. That's a whole other level above me. And I'd be the first to admit it. And I put Greg in that category. And Greg's also, by the way, and he'll talk a little bit about it. He was training to do the American Ninja course. He suffered an injury, but he's 60 whatever years old. If you ever watched American Ninja, it's all 20-year-old rail thin guys. I've watched Greg training for it because he posts videos. Amazing stuff. So if you ever struggle with mindset, you want to listen to that show because Greg has forgotten more than I'll ever know.
And unfortunately, with that in mind, I need to start turning a corner and get some ads paid here. And, of course, my next guest. But, man, a great conversation. I'm glad we were able to do this. And we will connect again on Friday, day after tomorrow at 1 o'clock for the Living Fit After 50.
There you go.
So you're making it more difficult than it needs to be. I'm a simple-minded man. And
as am I.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be right back on the Big Talker Network with our guest, Dr. You're tuned in to the Big Talker Network, Wilmington, North Carolina's premier internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.
Oh no, our roof is leaking and hurricane season is right around the corner. Don't let a leaky roof keep you up at night. Protect your home. Call Best Choice Roofing to schedule your free, yes, absolutely free roof inspection. Best Choice Roofing works with insurance or can repair the roof before the next storm, whether it's a full replacement or a repair. Choose the best. Call Best Choice Roofing at 910-228-5000 or go to bestchoiceroofing.com to book your appointment today.
Watch out! You got me! The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. We're learning new details from the district attorney about a fatal shooting last month in Brunswick County. Quasi Walker was shot and killed in Leland on July 31st. After reviewing evidence in the case, District Attorney John David said DeAndre Davis was legally justified in using deadly force against Walker. According to the DA, it stemmed from an altercation that escalated between the two. Davis apparently had been held at gunpoint and was severely beaten until he got a gun and shot Walker. Davis then jumped from a window and called for help. After 7 years, a verdict has been reached in the trial of a Wilmington man accused of shooting and killing another man. Antonio Beatty has been found not guilty of first-degree murder in the death of 25-year-old Carlton Walker Whitley. Whitley was shot and killed in July of 2015 in a parking lot near the corner of Darlington and Medding Roads. After 7 years of delays, Beatty's case went to trial last week. According to New Hanover County's District Attorney Ben David and Beatty's attorney, the evidence presented by the state did not prove its case against Beatty beyond a reasonable doubt. The UNCW Seahawks are taking flight in a new way. The Federal Aviation Administration has selected the university for a special training initiative. UNCW has been teaching drone classes since 2017 and is now a part of the FAA Unmanned Aircraft Systems Collegiate Training Initiative. It's part of the certificate program for geospatial intelligence. That certificate is offered to students and members of the community. UNCW professor Dr. Narcissa Percope will lead the initiative. And a recent spike in vandalism and damage at a Wilmington park is prompting police and other officials to hold a community meeting. Wade Park is located on Bethel Road. It covers nearly 17 acres and includes a playground, picnic shelter, bike racks, parking, and restrooms. If you'd like to share your input and concerns, a meeting will be held at the park next Tuesday afternoon between 4 and 6 p.m. For more on these stories, you can head over to wwaytv3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Drier conditions in store for us on this Wednesday. Although we are going to be under mostly cloudy skies, temperatures are going to be below the average, getting into the middle 80s, lower 80s for the immediate coastline, and the humidity still sticking around with the stalled front just off to our south. Not going to rule out an isolated shower over the course of the day today. As for tonight, our temperatures dropping back down into the upper 60s and the lower 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Join Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, located at 8210 River Road, Southport, is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with the Tackle Box open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6. Marine Service Pro is a full Suzuki and Tohatsu dealership. They deal in pre-owned boats, full service and repair, with certified technicians in all engines, and fiberglass specialists. The Tackle Box offers fresh, local seafood, live bait, a tackle shop, and fish packing and shipping. They also offer a full-service U-Haul dealership. Spend time with Leon or Jenny for one-stop shopping at Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, 8210 River Road, Southport.
Part. And here we go. Welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge right here in a world gone mad with our special guest, Dr. Larry Cahoon. And again, I'm going to reemphasize how it is that I met Dr. Cahoon was on his work relating the decline in the striped bass population of the Cape Fear River to situations that, it was indicative something's wrong. And just the other day, I came across an article that it seems to be the same thing, and that's why I have a smart guy scientist with a biology understanding to explain how a mushroom can be an indicator of what we're doing to ourselves. Good morning, Dr. Cahoon. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, Cape Fear Riverwatch Wednesday. Now, I think it's Oregon that I discovered this particular fungus. Apparently, it covers most of the state, thousands of square miles.
It's not a single mushroom. You have that image of this ginormous mushroom,
right?
Looming over everyone,
with Alice sitting on top smoking a hookah or a caterpillar or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Not happening.
And kind of like a giant invasive UFO or something like that. But most fungi are filamentous, and this one is, meaning it looks like a collection of tiny threads. But when you analyze it, you realize all those tiny threads are connected to all these other tiny threads, and it's really one big organism that has spread throughout the soil in this area. I think it was some thousands of acres. Really impressive coverage for a single organism. And they can tell that from doing the genetics on it.
So it's the same mushroom From one end of the state to the other. It's millions of pounds. I mean, they can't. It's so big they can't even weigh it or figure. They're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, you can't weigh. Yeah, it's impossible. And each filament is tiny and thread-like, but there are millions and millions and millions of them, and they branch off and they go up and down in the soil. So you have a three-dimensional organism, and fungi typically make a living absorbing nutrients from dead things, although
like my dreams.
The scary half of their biology is that they don't have to wait for something to die to start eating it. Death to them is just a convenience. Fungal infections of plants, animals, humans are all real major problems out there. Now, I'm going to issue a caveat right off. I am not a botanist, and so I'm going to try to be very careful about the plant-related things that I have to say about this. But people who farm grains, wheat, corn, and rice, for that matter, the three big grains that humans consume, all of those grains have issues with fungal infections to one degree or another. There's some number of different fungi that
But just a little moisture, and you can ruin an entire crop or an entire harvest.
And farmers will tell you that dealing with fungal infections of their crops is a real nightmare. And there's a fundamental reason why this is a problem. We just don't know a lot about fungi. There aren't many people who study them. They're not as sexy as corn crops and stuff like that. They're not as sexy as your charismatic megafauna, whales and dolphins. They're
we can
not as infectious as bacteria. A lot of folks think of antibiotics as drugs that'll cure most anything. Well, most antibiotics won't touch fungi. We have some drugs for dealing with fungal infections of people, but thankfully those are not as common as bacterial infections, and we have better drugs for bacteria. But fungal infections of humans are scary. Our drug selection is limited. And they're pretty
side
tough
effect
to
of
kill.
those drugs. Yeah. You have to kill the
not
host.
Trivial. Yeah, that's right. And I don't want to get too far down the horror stories of human infections, although I will mention that fungi are major players in the world of allergies, molds and mildews and things like that. They're all fungi. But circling back to the plants, corn, for example, can be affected by fungal infections if you get too much moisture at the wrong time in the growing season. One of the consequences of corn that's a little too moist as it matures is that you can have a fungal infection that produces aflatoxin.
That does not sound good or tasty.
No, aflatoxin.
Toxin. Okay, I'm going to start there. Toxin is like deadly. Killer.
Yeah, when you hear toxin, you hear poison. That's right. Aflatoxin is bad news.
And it's not the duck. Aflatoxin. No.
No. Afla. A-F-L-A. Toxin. There's some suspicion that you may have heard of the Salem witch trials.
Thankfully, before my time.
The town of Salem in the 1600s in Massachusetts went bazoo about witches and all of this stuff, and there was all this crazy fear of witchcraft and so on. And there's a reasonable case that's been made, not proven, but made, that aflatoxin in their grain supplies might have caused bizarre neurological symptoms.
Wow.
That led people to hallucinate, led them to believe things that weren't there, and so forth and so on. And coming out of that would have been, a somewhat more rational response to say, oh, this is witchcraft. I mean, they had no conception of neurological toxins and things like that.
We didn't even understand refraction, so the rainbow was still a magical sight.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was a gift from the gods, right.
Right, so our awareness of the physical world was still in its infancy, and we're going to drown people based on hallucination.
Right, exactly. They had no explanation based in science. They didn't have the science to understand any of this stuff, and so, again, a case has been made that a fungal toxin caused people to go crazy. We do know that has happened more recently. I mean, aflatoxin is well known as a major problem, and if they find it in food supplies, boom, those food supplies are gone. I can remember batches of peanut butter being taken off the market because the peanuts were afflicted with aflatoxin, and there's no safe dose that we know of. Yeah, that too.
Wow.
And so
Google is scaring the hell out of me this morning.
That one. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And another thing that I heard, and I have to say I heard this. I'll pass it along with the caveat that I've heard it. I haven't seen the evidence directly. Maybe I shouldn't go there. It was about using corn raised in North Carolina to feed swine. And the concern was that there was too much aflatoxin out and about in corn for grain from North Carolina because we have a moist climate. And I think it was more along the lines of the risk of having aflatoxin was greater than they found to be acceptable. So most of the corn that is used to feed swine in North Carolina actually is imported. We don't grow enough corn here anyway to feed all those pigs and chickens and turkeys and so on. So they'd have to import it anyway. But I remember being told by someone way back in the business that, no, aflatoxin's an issue. So it's out there. But that's just one example of how fungi poke their little filaments into our consciousness. There are other examples of that. The story you shared with me about this enormous fungus living in Oregon, highlights that it makes a living off decomposing organic matter.
Which is normal.
Ecologically,
ecologically,
that's a good function.
Right. We need something to break it down.
Right. These are decomposers. This is the job they do. They recycle all the nutrients in that decaying and in that organic matter, and they're responsible for its decay. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that fungi, quite unusually, are capable, not all of them, but many of them are capable of decomposing wood. Now, you think about that.
The cellulose that we cannot.
Yeah, we cannot digest the cellulose in wood, we humans. If you make sawdust out of it and feed it to cows, they can digest that. I wouldn't recommend that, but they can do it. But fungi frequently can break down the cellulose in wood and turn that into the individual sugar molecules that make up cellulose, which is a polymer. We were talking about polymers last week. And they can just, digest it. And that, again, serves a good purpose. I mean, if you grow a forest and the trees fall down eventually when they get old and nothing can digest the wood, we'd have a landscape filled with logs.
And we wouldn't have any oil.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah. The decomposers, would not be able to turn that stuff into something else. But in fact, if you hike around in an old growth forest, you'll see lots and lots of logs in various states of decomposition. The fungi are slow. It's not like they'll sneak up on you when you're camping and take you out of your sleeping bag.
They're not
Bears will
exactly
do that. The
ambulatory.
fungi won't.
Right.
Right. Yeah, they're not going to overgrow your face while you're asleep.
That's kudzu.
So no fears. No horror movies here. On the other hand, when you get something like athlete's foot, that's a fungal infection. And that's because your feet have been hot and moist for far too long, and they haven't been kept clean and dry, and you can get a pretty good fungal infection going. The fungi are digesting parts of your skin, so they're not waiting for you to die, Now, we do have meds for athlete's foot and such things, and
right.
There are some other common fungal infections. I imagine folks could think of some of those things, yeast infections and that sort of thing. Buddy of mine who was in the hospital for a long time recently was given long courses of antibiotics, and one of the problems that he ran into was fungal infections in his mouth. You have a normal array of microbes living in your mouth and throughout your body. When you give antibiotics for a long time, you kill off a lot of the bacteria, which are normally there. And matter of fact, they're part of a healthy microbiome. And that provides an opportunity for various fungi to take over. And so you get yeast infections, which are pretty nasty. He had quite a bit of trouble with that. We were fussing with each other about, the doctors should have known that. You give a patient, antibiotics for a long time, they're likely to get a fungal infection, and he did a couple times. Then they had to treat that. In the meantime, his food tasted terrible.
I can imagine.
We'll spare the comments about hospital food, but it didn't smell as bad as he thought it tasted. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
The fungal infection made him very unhappy. Not fatal, but it certainly did not help his recovery. So that's something to bear in mind. They're all around us, and they're opportunists. They're waiting for opportunities to do what they do.
Now, what is the indicator of this fungus? Now that it's here and we're aware of it, and its enormous size, much like the striped bass was an indicator of poor conditions of the Cape Fear River. This fungus, according to the article, if this thing grows, we're screwed.
Mm-hmm. It's because it's a decomposer. Its massive size indicates that it's got lots of stuff to decompose. In other words, a lot of dead material. And in a healthy forest ecosystem, you're always going to have some dead material to work with. I said healthy. In a diseased or damaged forest ecosystem, for example, when you've come in and upset the normal balance of things, and you've got vegetation dying off, or if you have a fire come through and kill a lot of stuff without burning it all up, or a hurricane comes through, knocks over all the trees and kills them, you're going to have an awful lot of material for fungi to work with. Now, again, some of that is natural. But when you find, as the article points out, this large individual fungus, 4,000 acres worth of one individual, it says something is making it very happy. And it's made very happy by having lots of stuff to eat. So where is all that fungus food coming from? Well, again, a damaged ecosystem is going to generate a lot of dead material over and above the norm. And so that could be an indicator that there's been some real harm done. And if it weren't for people who knew what they were looking for and then had the tools to find it, we would be unaware of that. But it's a signal. It's an indicator that, all things considered, perhaps something has changed and perhaps something has gone wrong in that location. Nature works like that. Every
organism lives off of something else that's either dead or rotten.
You've put it very well. Yeah.
Every creature
or
on
alive,
this planet,
if it catches it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it wants to be
everything is
dead.
a resource.
The lion catches
Everything
the
is a
antelope,
resource.
waits for it to die, then eats it.
Right. Right.
The organisms normally wait for stuff to die, but this thing?
Right. And for that matter, think about how often you find the skeletons of dead animals out there. It isn't just carnivores that chew everything up. Quite often, something dies and the critters will come along and eat the fleshy parts but leave the skeleton. But the skeletons are broken down, again, by bacteria, fungi, and so on.
Which are living creatures way smaller than we can see. And just because we can't see them doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
That's right. And the study of fungi, which we call mycology, mycology, is actually not very common. We had a fellow here at UNCW who was a mycologist, and he retired, 15 years ago. And we have no one here now who works on that stuff. And when you look around in the literature or look at faculty specialties across the board in biology departments, there aren't many who study fungi. And personally, I think that's a big miss.
You could be improving on pizza toppings.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, people grow mushrooms for food. That's becoming a thing because there are certainly mushrooms that people enjoy eating. Shiitakes and morels and things like that. Portobello, yeah. Now, a word of caution: if you didn't already know this, many mushrooms are poisonous. And they are seriously poisonous, and only an expert can tell the poisonous ones apart from the ones that are edible.
There's no magic saying like leaves of 3, leave it be?
It's not even that simple. It's
I wouldn't
difficult.
think so.
I knew a guy who had a hobby of plucking mushrooms and eating them. And he was not a mycologist. He was not an expert. And he had a little book and so forth. But
he retired early.
He did poison himself once, which is bad. Fortunately, he ate one mushroom and it made him sick immediately. And he was ill for a little bit and then recovered. But many of them are really seriously poisonous. Well, think about it. You're sitting there on a log. Pretend you're a mushroom. You're sitting there on a log. You've poked up this stalk and cap, and you're defenseless, right? Except if you're poisonous. So when you see mushrooms popping up, bear in mind natural selection has found ways to protect them from being eaten. So you don't just go out in the yard and pluck them up and put them in a salad. It's a pretty good chance you'll be dead before too long. And I really want to make that point clear. Some of them are edible. Don't mess around with that. Buy them at the store. They're farmed. We know they're safe. Don't go out there and pick mushrooms on your own unless you are an expert. And being an expert means you've had formal training. formal
You have
classroom training, laboratory training, so that you can identify them for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, stand back and admire them for the marvels of natural selection that you've got. They're there to do a job. Most of the time, they're doing their job just fine. Sometimes they get out of hand. When that happens, whether it's an infection of a human, and again, a yeast infection is usually a sign of some imbalance in your own microbiome. Something has gone wrong. Okay? Out in nature, when you find a giant mushroom living there over 4,000 acres or whatever, it's not really a mushroom. Again, it's a fungal,
it's an
mycelium.
It's got its own zip code.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It votes in a precinct. Number of voters, 1. Yeah.
The one vote that counts, or I eat you.
Right.
Because it's now
that
eating.
Is in a sense, a very happy organism. It if it could smile, it would be smiling. What that is saying is that conditions throughout that 4,000-acre area are just right for that particular individual. And
they tested the DNA, so it's the exact same organism, one end to the other.
Yep. Yeah, it's like DNA fingerprinting.
And it's bigger than my ex-wife by a long shot. So this is going to be a problem. Anything that big eating that much, because it's going to be hungry. I mean, how do you maintain a 4,000-acre body? You continue to eat.
It must have plenty of resource and plenty of the right resource. They tend to be specialists to a little degree. In other words, when a single species dominates an ecosystem, that's because the conditions there all favor that one individual species. When a single individual dominates, that means, it's got things exactly the way it wants them and is successful because of that. So that tells me that whatever has gone on in that 4,000-acre area favored that one individual over all the others. And I would guess that there are other species of fungi around, but none of them as obviously successful as that one individual fungus. So, that's an observation that begs further observations. Is this the rule or is this unusual? I'm not sure we can say. It may very well be that that's the norm, and we just haven't looked well enough. Probably more likely that that's an unusual situation, but we don't know.
And it's
again, not a lot of people study fungi, and they probably, if they do study fungi, they're probably not looking to see, have I got a gargantuan fungus out here, or is it just a lot of small ones?
Now, it seems its diet is actually eating stuff we need, like living trees, living food, living grass. Whatever it touches, it just says, yum.
Some of them can do that.
It's almost like an obese person at a Golden Corral buffet.
You're going to be getting in trouble here with...
hey, the phone number is 910-444-0281. Call me. Call me. If this is a problem, call me. I will direct you to the Full Circle Fitness folks down there in Monkey Junction, and we will sort this whole damn thing out. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
But it's got to be hungry. It got to 4,000 acres in size. Now, to be fair, Oregon is 63 million, so, he's got a little room before the belt needs to be loosened.
Right. It's probably not a real serious specialist. It's probably a generalist. And again, I'm going on very little additional information. Some of them are very broadly distributed, meaning they're capable of using a lot of different resources. Humans are generalists. We eat a lot of different things, We don't specialize on just one thing. And so the real problem comes from our perspective when a fungus goes after living things like us, or like our crop plants, or our our domestic animals, or a key species.
If you come after our food, we got a problem.
Yeah, we do. A lot of these diseases of plants, the rusts and mildews and other things,
noble rot,
are they're terrible, terrible. They are major impactors on food production, which is pretty important.
Yeah.
And they often go after stressed plants. So if they're stressed for water or temperature or nutrients or anything like that, they may be more susceptible to fungal infection, just as we are.
Kind of like just standing out on a street corner at 3 o'clock in the morning counting out $100 bills. You're just attracting attention.
Yeah. Here's a resource. Come get it. The real trick is when we find pathogenic fungi, and those are the ones that really need very serious study. Now, the ag people have devoted decades and decades of work looking at crop pathogens. I can't pretend to cover that subject area at all. Again, I'm not really a botanist, but that is a vast undertaking, and for very good reason. The medical community is aware of fungal infections of humans. And again, we have to keep our guard up to make sure that those things don't get out of hand. We have a very limited number of drugs that we can use to deal with fungal infections. And we have a very limited set of fungicides we can use out in the real world for crops or domestic plants, whatever. But fungal infections among plants are very common, and horticulturists, aside from the ag people, will tell you that too. That can be a real problem. Fungi, as a rule, like moist conditions. Among other things, they usually produce some kind of spores. The spores are often airborne, and that's how they can behave as allergens for those of us with allergies. Yeah, you inhale them. And hopefully your immune system destroys them before they can germinate. I've heard a few horror stories of people whose lungs became infected with fungi, and their lungs filled with fungi, like a fungal pneumonia.
Oh, my
and that to me is one of the ultimate nightmares. I can't imagine anything, personally, I can't imagine anything scarier than that. Extremely difficult to treat, highly likely to kill you, and not slowly or not quickly and not pleasantly. Don't inhale the fungal dust, but they spread their spores throughout the air, and they settle wherever, and many of them don't make it, but those that find a good environment for them will sprout out little new colonies. And so they're all around us all the time, and they simply wait for the right conditions, enough moisture, enough food, and that sort of thing, and then they start growing.
And these are indicators, much like the striped bass, that we need to pay attention to. The more of these types of outrageous weirdness, it's indicative of, as you had mentioned, an unhealthy environment that's now out of balance.
Right.
And our presence, this is the part that registered in my head. Until humans came along a few thousand years ago and started mucking it all up, everything was humming along just fine. And now, according to the article, a lot of our bad behavior, thinking we're being good stewards by putting out the forest fire, when in fact we should have left the forest fire for the fungus to do its job. We've actually exacerbated the problem and now providing this monstrous organism to continue to do damage inadvertently to where we already are.
Right, yeah. One of the pathways that your comment brings up is that with a lot of forests, we've tried to suppress fire. And we're learning the hard way that suppressing fire doesn't always accomplish the goal we seek, which is, again, a balanced ecosystem. And if you allow organic matter to build up in a forest, if it's dry, it burns. If it's wet, it rots.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And so when we suppress fire and allow this massive buildup of organic stuff that would otherwise have been burned up, by natural fires that are usually not as intense. Instead, we create optimal conditions for the decomposers, the fungi and such. And again, make it moist and they love it. Dry it up and it burns way hotter than we'd like it to. And that's when you get these really catastrophic fires. Now, drought is a complicating factor in terms of fire, and we're talking about fungi, but fungi like it wet. And so, if you've got a very organic-rich environment where you've come in and either suppressed fire for a very long time, or you've gone in, say, and logged and left all the slash, the branches and leaves and pine needles and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, just left all that stuff lying, taken out the big logs, and left all this organic matter suddenly decomposing or there to be decomposed lying around and allow it to, get wet. Now you've created an optimal condition for fungi. And that's not always a good thing. I mean, they'll do their job, but they may do it, more and rougher than we'd like. Again, for people with fungal allergies, you can tell. I mean, true story. The building I'm working in right now used to have problems with a leaking roof. And when water got inside the building, it caused mold. And I had a mold allergy problem. Man. I could walk in the building, and within 30 seconds, I was aware that I was having trouble breathing because the building was moist inside where it should not have been. And that's just the molds doing what they do. Provide the moisture. There's all kinds of
cellulose,
wonderful organic things in here to metabolize.
Wood, paper?
Oh, yeah. Ceiling tiles. Ceiling tiles are made of organic matter. And they love that.
So just like opening a cafeteria for the fungus.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Provide the moisture that they need, and oh God, you're going to have fungi.
It only takes like one or two
wazoo.
Spores, and those things will just take off.
They will. Yeah,
like
again, they're very happy. You make them happy, and they'll get happier and happier and happier, and there'll be a lot more of them. They do what they're programmed to do. I remember in my other office, black ceiling tiles, and we used to joke about the Klingons had colonized Earth. Except they weren't, bipedal. They were these black fungi.
Stalactites.
And it turned out I was allergic to them.
Oh, man.
So,
it's hard to come up
with
it's hard to come up with a takeaway. I mean, we've run through the hour easily, and I knew this was going to be a big topic that I need to do some more digesting, as it were, to try and understand. But as an indicator, the scientifically illiterate are not going to be as stunned or motivated to do something about this as people who are scientifically aware as yourself or curious as myself to kind of go, whoa. So,
I would say in a moist environment like coastal North Carolina, and it's moist most of the time, we've got a lot of fungi around us, a lot more than people realize because they're largely invisible. And we're trying to create structures and crops and yards and gardens and pets and ourselves and keep them all away from fungi or keep fungi away from us. And yet that's a real struggle. We're up against a largely invisible opponent here that's just doing what it does, and we have created conditions to a great degree that allow that assemblage of fungi to decompose things we don't want decomposed.
And, oh, man. All right, so we're going to dig into this a little bit more over the week, and hopefully next week I'll have more intelligent questions about the actual takeaways, what we can do from this. But right now I got to get to paying the bills and getting to the news and getting to the rest of the day, because, I mean, this is, it's terrifyingly fascinating, because we are talking about
it's a matter
living
of
death.
Being aware. Yeah, if we're aware of these things, we handle them better.
And if we're not understanding them, we end up fearing them and having knee-jerk reactions and burn down the entire forest, which will actually do no good, because the fungus would just be like, okay, I'm dormant.
Yeah,
you
that would be
scorched my
bad.
skin.
Yeah.
I'll just wait until you guys are done, and then I'll eat you too.
That's right.
Oh, man.
That's right.
This is scary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a little mushroom, right? It's
right.
And it may go well with, your regular mushroom might go well with sausage and pepperoni, but in this case, man.
Well, they have cousins who are not so friendly to us.
Exactly. Yeah, this mushroom, Kevin saw God. This one killed Jimmy in 3 minutes. So neither of those two would be a good one right now. I'm just trying to have a salad.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry I have to cut this short, but it is time to get on with the rest of the day, and the Asylum will be back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We will see you then. Oh, wait, I have the wrong button. If I hit that button... You're tuned in to the Big Talker Network, Wilmington, North Carolina's premier internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.